I have accepted that these things have happened, and I try to understand why they've happened the way they've happened, and that's what I've tried to share today. Certainly I didn't come to that conclusion overnight, this whole happy, lovey conclusion. It took a lot of time, therapy, feeling a wide range of emotions, the anger, the sadness, the feeling of chips, all those kinds of things. But the way I see it now is these experiences are a part of me, a crucial component of my identity, and I see the opportunity to learn so much from them. I see that if I can learn from my past experiences, whatever the past experiences are, they don't have to be anything as illustrious as what I described, but if we can learn from our past experiences, then we have an enormous advantage in doting on that and moving forward into the future, and reflecting on that so we maybe don't make the same mistakes or do things differently in a more productive manner moving forward. The one thing that I got out of this life experience that I just described, the thing that I feel that I gained the most, is that I have developed trust in myself. I feel like that's my favorite quality about myself, is that I trust myself. And that's the case because, again, I tend to this mental hygiene. I monitor my feelings, thoughts, and emotions on an everyday basis. In other words, I'm always listening to myself. And sometimes I'm always listening for the thoughts that enter my mind, and sometimes they're not always initially positive thoughts. A bad thought, many bad thoughts often come into my mind. But I don't judge myself or think less of myself because bad thoughts come into my mind. Because thoughts are only thoughts. They're just random ideas or feelings or concepts that enter our minds. We don't have control over the thoughts that enter our minds, but we can have systems in place to separate the good thoughts from the bad thoughts that enter our minds, and then choose to modify the bad thoughts so we don't make bad choices. Because there are no consequences to having bad thoughts rolling through your mind. Thoughts enter our minds. There are consequences in life to having bad choices. So I always, for myself, make the distinction between having a bad thought and having a bad choice. Because I've had some pretty bad thoughts in my life. Dealing with this kind of stuff going on in my childhood, my mind has gone to some pretty wild places. And since I always say I have full disclosure, and since I feel like these are things that go in more people's minds, but people don't always talk about them, I'm just going to say a couple things that are, a bit out there that have entered my mind. I haven't done any of these things, by the way. But, when I was younger and my father would be being violent or would be hurting my mother's feelings, or I would see my mother cry because of something he did, yeah, the thought came into my mind. Would it be easier if I just killed him right now? What if I just, took a knife and boom, done? Bad thought that entered my mind. Clearly a bad thought that entered my mind. Again, I didn't do that. Second, I know what it's like to have a moment where you're in the car, you're driving, and you're crying, something really bad happens, and you just, for a split second, the thought comes into your mind, what if I just, took my car and just drove it into a pole right now, and just, whatever, and again, bad thought. Here I am with full disclosure saying these things. And this is something that's come into my mind recently, as recently as 2 or 3 weeks ago, that I have to monitor. Again, I'm still continuing to deal with these things as I get older. I was having a bad day, and I was the thought comes into my mind, what if I just called up one of my friends who I know has pot on them, and we just I got really high right now, and I just for the rest of the day, just didn't have to think about anything. The temptation of just numbing my mind for a few hours came in. Again, bad thought. Now, I've never tried to kill my father. At this point, I have no anger toward him whatsoever. Fortunately, I've never tried to injure or kill myself, and I've never smoked marijuana in my life. Because I know I have addictive genetics, I try to steer clear of drugs, just mainly really that's my main motivation for just not doing drugs, is just because the addictive qualities that are consequential. So these thoughts have entered my mind. What you may be asking yourself is, how can I say I trust myself if these tempting or treacherous thoughts have entered my mind? But I know that my thoughts don't define me. My choices and my actions define me. And when I have a bad thought like this, I immediately stop myself and say, okay, well no, we gotta come up with that's like a flasher. We gotta come up with some new kind of plan. I accept and take full accountability for the fact that this thought has crossed my mind. And I immediately assess the stress. I make a commitment to identify what it is that's bothering me and try to come up with some sort of solution to deal with that problem in a productive and healthy way that will allow me to live the life that I want to live.